What up, everybody? BMF Season 3, Episode 5, titled Battle of Techwood, picked up soon after Episode 4 left off with Meech and T now in Atlanta and going to party at Platinum Palace. Starting off with Loco telling Meech that he moved that weight up in Michigan fast. And Meech explained to Loco that it wasn't just him, but it was also his brother who helped him move it. Keep it in mind, up until now, Loco hasn't wanted anything to do with T, and that is why Meech had to return to Detroit last episode to handle the shipment. But after Meech told Loco that his brother helped him, Loco extended his hand out to Terry and the two shook hands. This is significant because this means Loco isn't going to force Meech to head back to Detroit every time they have a shipment to pick it up, that he's going to let Terry handle it now. Then before Loco left, Meech told Loco that he's going to be heading to St. Louis soon to expand their network up there also. So we can definitely expect Meech to finally take that trip to St. Louis in either episode 6 or 7. This is when Stax walked up to Meech and let him know that he has him for life. And it's nothing but positive vibes from here on out. Then Terry asked Meech the question, so you just been clubbing and partying and out here? And he was about to get his answer as Meech and Stax spotted Remy Ransom and T got introduced to Platinum Palace the same way Meech did as a fight broke out with Remy Ransom's Techwood crew. Then when leaving the club, Meech and T were talking to a boxer named Mac Attack when gunfire broke out in the parking lot, resulting in Diesel getting killed. At this point it was assumed that it was Remy retaliating, but Meech later found out that it was all part of a setup from Stax and the MKs. So Terry now knew that it wasn't just all fun and partying in Atlanta, that Meech had got himself in the middle of a war that he didn't tell Terry anything about. Also noticed something very important between the Flannery brothers' conversation with Mac Attack that will play a key role moving forward. Mac Attack had hidden compartments hidden throughout the car that were like safes, and he told Meech and T about a guy named Francois who put it all together for him down in Miami. And we definitely know this is something that BMF will use later on for transporting drugs from state to state. When the crew got back to Duffy's house after the club, of course, Stax immediately started blaming Remy for Diesel getting killed and came up with a plan to take out Remy at Techwood, saying he had a shorty in Techwood that sneaks him in and out. While everyone else knew that this was a terrible idea, Meech went along with Stax's idea to take Remy out at Techwood, but had Tina follow Stax to see what he was really up to, only to find out that Stax was working with the MKs and was also behind Diesel getting killed. While this was all going down in Atlanta, back in Detroit, Charles was still continuing to pull out all the stops to get his lady back. After last episode doing dumbbell curls in front of her, cooking dinner, fixing the drywall, and oiling up. Now Charles wrote Lucille a song and decided to meet up with Sister Riley from the old church to help him. Keep it in mind that it was Lucille's idea to leave the old church and join the new one. And either though the new church is more Lucille's style, Charles clearly misses his old church that was more focused on music, and he was able to be a musician at that church. But Charles told Riley that they decided to go to a closer church. And when the two innocently touched hands, Lucille's cousin saw it go down and went to report it to Lucille. This is right after the pastor of Lucille's new church asked her to be the associate pastor. Part of the reason why, because Lucille was a family woman. So if Lucille decided to move forward with her divorce, I wonder if this opportunity would still be available. Because this caused Lucille to wait for Charles to get home with a baseball bat. Now Lucille is kind of savage if you think about it. Keep it in mind how she intimidated Mabel in season 2, broke Charles' guitar, and even when Lamar came to take her out before she prayed for him, she was looking for her kitchen knife in her apron like she was going to try to stab Lamar even. And now she was waiting for Charles to get home with a baseball bat, only to find out that her cousin was wrong and Charles was actually working on a song for her. This caused Lucille to hook back up with Charles, but the whole time she was thinking about Maurice as she was gazing at his card when Charles came back for round 2. Then we see Bryant finally getting released from jail after what had to have been at least a couple of days because Meech and T were already in Atlanta for a night at this point. And he gets picked up by Henry's people who had the assignment to take Bryant out. But Bryant was able to scrap his way out of the car and run off, and went immediately to check in on Kevin, who he found out had been violated, telling Bryant that the same people who were supposed to be protecting him was now hurting him. So not only did Henry remove the protection, she also told them to abuse Kevin. Now I mentioned before that there's a good chance that it was the guards and not the inmates who were protecting Kevin because of Henry's father's connections. And at the end of the episode, we see that Kevin wasn't able to handle it anymore and took his own life. Most likely this was also Henry's intention from the beginning. So we know for sure that Bryant will be on demon time and at war with Henry moving forward. We might even see him going after the guards if that was Henry's connection on the inside. The thing is, Bryant will also likely find a way to blame BMF for this whole thing because the fact it was Meech who got him arrested in the first place. This episode we also got to see exactly how crazy Henrietta is as well. Like I said, when her people got back to her and reported that Bryant escaped, she was furious and challenged the hitter to a fight. When he wouldn't fight her, she cut herself on the side of the stomach and forced him to fight before cutting his water off. But something very important that took place during this scene was the fact that they blamed Bryant for Twan getting killed. Keeping in mind that Henry and her father have connections to the police department. So most likely they read Jen's statement that it was the driver of the ambulance that killed Twan. And this is likely a good part of the reason why Henry did Kevin the way she did as well. But when Bryant went to tell Jen that Kevin was in trouble, she was hanging out with her new partner, Detective Amberson, who she just got done telling that Bryant was the driver of the ambulance, and the two planned on arresting Bryant to try to get him to flip. That's when Henrietta and her crew pulled up to Detective Jen's house, killing Detective Amberson in the process. Also keep in mind it was mentioned earlier in the episode Detective Amberson's father was up for re-election. So there's a good chance that we will be introduced to Councilman Amberson at her funeral the next episode. And one big question I have, even though it looks like Detective Amberson was killed by Henry, was she actually killed by Detective Bryant? Because she was talking about arresting him. And maybe that's why he told her he was sorry before walking out. Wrapping up with the Detroit side of things, back in Atlanta after finding out Stack's plan to walk them into a trap, Meech's next plan was to talk to Remy Ransom to make a temporary alliance. Keep it in mind that this would be a very dangerous place for Meech to go, especially alone, so his entire crew told him that they would go with him, including Rip the Rapper, who Meech told to stay out the streets and focus on his rap career earlier in the episode. But either though Stacks was lying and planned on setting Meech and T up, he wasn't lying about one thing. He did have a shorty in Techwood, and when she saw BMF pulling up, she called Stacks and let him know it was about to go down. Because of this, Meech was never able to finish his conversation with Remy. But as the two sides had guns drawn, because Remy wasn't trying to hear what Meech had to say, the MKs and Stacks pulled up firing. During this shootout, there was a kid named Lil Mill who was standing at the doorway of the apartment that Remy was at and got killed by Glock, who screamed out no mercy as Meech watched the whole thing go down. And Lil Mill's father ran after him and blamed the whole thing on Remy. So because of this, keep it in mind how Remy's always trying to look out for the kids and protect the neighborhood. Remy might have a change of heart and agree to make peace with BMF, while also being on demon time going after the MKs. During this shootout, BMF also lost Rip the Rapper, and Meech promised him as he was taking his last breath that he would get his music out to the world. So this episode, BMF lost both Rip and Diesel, so now Duffy's the only remaining Detroiter left in Atlanta with Meech. Then out of nowhere, the PA crew from Detroit and Hoop showed up as backup and were able to help get the remaining BMF crew out of Techwood. And because Meech and T made it out alive, Glock then turned on Stacks and took him out. So we do know that the residents of Techwood will eventually vote to tear down Techwood and allow them to use the location for the '96 Olympics. And shootouts like this where kids and innocent civilians are killed was a big part of the reason why, simply not feeling safe in their own neighborhood. Then at the end of the episode, when everyone was back at Meech's house, when T and the Detroit crew were about to leave, T asked Meech if he was going to clean up before leaving, assuming that Meech was going to go back to Detroit with him. But Meech let T know that he was staying put in Atlanta, and as T was walking out of Meech's house, OG Terry the narrator mentioned a war with Henry that was waiting on him, setting the stage for the next episode as T leaves one war in Atlanta to another war in Detroit. And there you have it. Leave your thoughts, theories, and predictions in the comments.